Welcome back to City and State TV. I'm Gerson Borrero, Editor-at-Large here at the at All Things to All People, different platforms that we have. We're going to start this edition with an interview of an ex-assembly member from Brooklyn, New Yorker, who served only one term in the state legislature in the assembly. Javier Nieves, welcome to City and State, and thanks for joining me, because I know that you've been in the game, but not in the game, not in the public arena. You've been doing a lot of things still with community and grassroots and professional organizations. So tell me, you served in the legislature when David Dinkins was mayor.
That's correct.
And up in Albany, it was a little bit less of a zoo, of a circus.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your program, Gerson. And yes, I did serve in the legislature, although it was baptism by fire also at that time for me. As you well know, that I came in as a result of doing that whole Board of Estimate reshuffling and positions being opened up, and I sort of got involved very much in the redistricting process with Macchiarola and the Puerto Rican Legal Defense Fund and so forth and so on. And
Frank Macchiarola.
Frank Macchiarola, absolutely.
Charter revision.
Absolutely, and I played a big role in designing and helping map out the 51st Assembly District and the 38th Council seat, which was the first seat I ran for. Unknown completely, and I didn't intend to run for politics. I was thrusted into this position. My background is in architecture from the prestigious school of Pratt Institute, the architecture school. So it was something that I was thrusted in because there was no one, after the districts were drawn, that were volunteering to run. So it was about 9 people ran there, and I came in second. So all of a sudden, it became, hey, this guy can win. And one of the things that since I'm technically apt at doing some of these things, I was able to along with the Puerto Rican Legal Defense Fund, and I took the PAT course with Frank Macchiarola and all that, and we were able to almost have identical districts. The 38th and the 51st Assembly seat, the 38th Council seat, were almost similar, only in geographical locations that they covered: Park Slope, Red Hook, Gowanus, Wyckoff. So it was almost a natural progression that after I didn't win the city council, that Joe McCabe won, who, by the way, Bill de Blasio was her chief of staff at some point.
Bill de Blasio has worked for everyone in these positions. That is incredible. I don't know how let me save that for later, but finish, please.
Yeah, so it was a natural progression, and it was very clear that all the major players in terms of determining who would certainly have a good shot at winning the 51st Assembly seat. It was an open seat because Jim Brennan, who used to be our state assemblyman, I had a long conversation with him one day. He was undecided as to whether he should stay in the 51st or go to Park Slope.
And that's because of the change in demographics.
Absolutely. But Jim also wanted to, as a progressive assemblyman that he has always been, and a person who has always listened, although we have not always agreed on everything, but certainly on most things. I remember having that conversation, this is some time ago, where I told him, I said, are you going to do the right thing for us? Meaning us, the Latino community, the Puerto Rican community.
Because it became a Latino district.
It became a Latino district.
Just of the changes demographics.
Absolutely.
Primarily Puerto Rican.
Primarily Puerto Rican, homeowners predominantly, because it's not a highly densely populated district, with the exception of Red Hook, which has one of the biggest projects in the United States, developmental projects. So, and I try to put my best persuasion hat on as possible, and I don't know if I had anything to do with it. I'm sure that
you were at the right place at the right time.
At the right time, but he certainly did the right thing for us.
So here's the guy who's not an attorney, who isn't the regular political operative from coming out of campaigns. You're an architect. You wind up having a whole different view of the world. How does that compare when you went by, if you say the right place, right time, by luck, whatever, Almighty had, stored for you? You go in and wind up 2 years in the legislature. You wind up actually seeing what it's like from the inside of the belly of the beast. And now you look at what's happening. I mean, in my lifetime, I'm sure in yours also, that you have not only the Democratic leader of the Assembly, Sheldon Silver, and then the Republican leader of the state Senate, Republican Dean Skelos, having to leave their post. That it's a selection process among the members of each of the houses, having to leave when you have a governor, Andrew Cuomo, who's no novice to the whole procedure of what the corruption crisis epidemic has been in Albany, even when prior to his father being governor, all of a sudden claiming that he came in to clean, in 2010, he came in to clean up government. I think that there's more corruption than ever.
Well, these changes that are happening, and there's always rumblings in Albany. I mean, that was my experience. Right. And there was always some dissent, some group that was dissenting from what was happening. And I sort of went up there with a group of new legislators, Keith Wright.
Wow, he was new at that point.
He was new. We sort of have a group of friends, which was Keith Wright, Darrell Towns, Gary Pretlow from Yonkers, and myself. There was the new class of people from the city, pretty much. And so there was always rumblings. And actually, I did participate in the voting process for Sheldon Silver.
When he was elected?
When he was elected, because I went in when Saul Weprin was the Speaker of the State Assembly.
Wow.
So I knew Saul Weprin, and what I got to know about him and my dealings with him in that year that I was there, he was a person that certainly listened, and he was certainly trying to grab my ear and control me to some degree, because I was a very young man. I was the youngest man up in Albany at the time. So I was all over the place. They tell me that I was climbing all over the walls. I thought it was like I was walking and run like a turtle. So I wanted things to happen quickly, and that doesn't take place up in Albany. So
that has not changed.
That has not changed. That's still the same way, and progress is very, very slow. And it's a system that is entrenched in the historical perspective is really much like the power bosses. And so that obviously, and power is concentrated on a few individuals. And so that's a perfect formula, the three men in the room cliche, and so.
It's not a cliche, it's actually.
It's actually true, absolutely.
Right.
So it's not a cliche, rightly corrected. But certainly power is concentrated in these individuals, and they exert it. And one of the things that does is it's a perfect formula for corruption, because you feel untouchable. I was there as a state assemblyman, and look, I got to feel like they cater to you so much. You get to feel you're in a bubble.
Almighty.
You're almighty in a simple position that we're supposed to be legislating for the people. We're made to feel by the lobbyists, by the photo sessions, the interviews, all of this stuff, as if, wow, man, I'm really it.
Does the media play a role in making you guys feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who doesn't?
Do we pay too much attention to the process instead of paying attention to getting the people's job done? For example, an assemblyman member from the 51st district goes up from Brooklyn. Should we be more concentrated? Should the media be more informed about what that assembly member is going to do instead of all this political, inside baseball? Are we doing our job?
I think you're doing your job. I just think that it comes with the turf. New York is so vast and big that it would be great if the media would concentrate on the issues of the particular district, of the nuances of what's happening there. But in this day and age, that's highly unlikely to happen. So therefore, and I think the media does an excellent job. That sometimes it goes overboard or maybe underboard or however, but I think it's a balancing factor.
If we do, because I want to move on to the city, but if we do our job, is Governor Cuomo being left off the hook? It seems like it's all about Shelley, it's all about Skelos, But he was the third man in the room, and we're really not saying much other than the Moreland Commission, and that has dying down. It's like all of a sudden he becomes this, because he, in a way, Andrew, you've been a loudmouth on certain things, on corruption especially, and yet all of a sudden he's mute. We don't hear anything from him. Se quedó mudo.
Once again, I think it's the nature of the beast. Okay. One of the fast lessons that I learned up in Albany, or once I won that position, not only in Albany, was that it becomes a balancing act, and it becomes smoking mirrors, and it becomes all of the tools that are put out there at your disposal, and so that damage control, and you're going to take a hit on this because we're going to pick you up on this over here.
It's what's worked out behind.
Absolutely. So
in those Democratic and Republican conferences
where no one else is there. I mean, but there's the other side of that I also would like to share. That most people may feel that because I was a state assemblyman that I'm sort of siding with the state assembly. It's a job that even though statutorily it's a part-time job, the reality is that no one, even if they just happen to be lazy and don't want to work, can go and just ride the wave. There is so much work to be done that these guys are really doing a lot of work. Now, the problem is that some of them are doing the wrong work.
Okay, okay, all right. But by the way, I go back to the governor. I don't want to be unfair to him, but maybe the governor shouldn't be speaking on this thing when it's this serious. So you think that's another side? Is that to be fair to him, or is it
I think you have to.
This is a guy who really spoke out against corruption, and all of a sudden he becomes mute.
I think there's relationships that are built up that throughout many years. I served under his father, Governor Cuomo. Mario Cuomo. And certainly, I mean, I have the most highest regards for Mario in terms of, and he certainly treated me.
But Javier, but wait a minute. These are people who ask for a job from constituents. They ask for a job from Doña Juana and Don Manuel, John and Jill, and they want this job. So what do you mean that there's relationships built? The only relationship that should be built is with the constituent.
Absolutely, and that should be the ultimate response. You're ultimately responsible to your constituency. But the reality is that we would be how would I say? We would be dreaming up scenarios that are really very naive or just dreamers in thinking that a person that's up there 20, 30 years hasn't established friendships and relationships and teachers' pet relationships and best legislators. Human nature takes over. So obviously you and I and anyone don't want to see a good friend of yours be taken down in one way or another.
If he's a crook, I do.
But no, absolutely, without a doubt. Now, what I do say is that sometimes you have to let things play out, and in this case, the issue of Shelley Silver and Skelos being taken down is it's in a legal process right now, and so therefore you have to give it the leeway, that space, so that it can unravel and see. And so then I would imagine that the governor would come to and make some statements. Now, obviously, they're elected officials, and they're
Can the governor? We don't know at this point because Preet Bharara has really, extended the net, thrown the net, has enticed us to say, stay tuned. Is it possible that the governor becomes a person who may be indicted?
I could not answer that question.
Okay, all right, but I'm saying
there's always a possibility.
Okay,
there's always a possibility, but I could not answer that question. I think I got to meet Andrew Cuomo one time, and I think he's done some great things. And so, but other than that, I don't know the details, the nuances of what's happening up there. And I've been away from Albany for a long time. And once I left Albany, I think I've gone up there twice.
Yeah, but you seem to know the nature, you deal with politicians. And let me bring you to Bill de Blasio. This is a guy who and I say a guy because he's a fellow Brooklynite. He's a guy that who worked on these different, who hasn't Bill de Blasio worked for? He's been a political operative. Right now, he was elected mayor. I say, in hindsight, and I was talking the other day with some politicians, in hindsight, he's 18 months into his first 4 years by fluke. I mean, but in the fact that, he really wasn't the progressive candidate that was there. It was John Liu. Christine Quinn self-destructed herself, her campaign didn't. So he's in there. He's elected mayor, bona fide mayor. You know him personally. What's your assessment of Bill de Blasio now as mayor?
Well, I know Bill for over 20 some odd years. We worked on the David Dinkins campaign. I was also responsible for delivering Sunset Park for David Dinkins.
In this the 2013 campaign.
And I also worked for Bill de Blasio's, I'm saying David Dinkins or when he became mayor.
In the same area.
In the same area, I also delivered Sunset Park.
When you say delivered, that means that
Meaning
you worked
I worked the campaign. I worked with my group of people in Sunset Park. We did everything that encompasses electioneering, which means from subway stops to churches to phone banking to canvassing to all of that, and certainly doing a pull-out operation on election day. So I'm talking about the whole kit and caboodle. Now, the reality is that when he, I also did fundraising for him. So the whole 9 yards.
You did everything that a person who thought that this was the right candidate to lead New York City as mayor, as the next mayor after 12 years of Michael Bloomberg, would have done. And because you believed in him, so you worked for him.
I believed in him because I've always seen his politics. I know Bill from when he was in this Community School Board 15, which, by the way, our Chancellor Farina used to be the superintendent.
Carmen Farina. We're speaking with Javier Nieves. Excuse me a minute, Javier. I'm going to do the following. I'm going to pause here for a second. So we're going to go into part 2 because we're running out of the regular scheduled time. When we come back, I want to know from Javier Nieves, after detailing what you did for Bill de Blasio in 2013, how you know him for how long, and you just mentioned Carmen Farina, an important component of what is the government of New York City and governing 200,000 kids that we have, the future of New York City and in this state. We'll talk more about Javier Nieves' perspective of the person that now has become Mayor Bill de Blasio. We'll return back here, City and State TV. I'm Gerson Borrero.